Welcome in, everybody, to the very first episode of Choosing the Magic, the podcast, the YouTube show. We are so excited to have you join us to talk about all things Walt Disney World, the Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, all the kingdoms, and Universal Studios, some of America's most beautiful beaches. We're going to cover it all during the course of this podcast. I am really excited to be joined by my co-host, the beautiful and brilliant Brandi Elam. Hey, baby.
Hey.
I'm really excited about this. Can you tell?
I can tell.
I've been podcasting for years, in case you're watching us for the first time, which this is our first episode, so you probably are, on other shows. And I've been trying to get Brandi to do this with me. So I had to start a podcast based on her interests in order to get her in front of a microphone and a camera. So here we are. I am so excited. I do want to mention at the start of this episode that this episode is brought to you by Peaceful Warrior Coffee Company, where they will roast your specialty grade beans on the same day they ship them to you. There is no fresher coffee on the internet, and shipping is always free. So please go check out peacefulwarriorcoffee.com. And if you use discount code MAGIC, you'll get 10% off your first order. So go check them out. Thank you so much. All right. So in this episode, our debut, our premiere, we are going to cover Brandi's Disney origin story. And I can't wait to hear this because I really haven't heard a lot of these details. Now, you're going to learn some things about Brandi and her family in this episode. And just prepare yourself because it's an entertaining story. But Brandi, you are the oldest of how many children?
11.
11 kids. And at some point, your parents thought, it would be a really good idea. Let's load up our 4,000 children and take them to Walt Disney World from the Birmingham, Alabama area. Y'all drove down in a van of some kind, I'm guessing?
Yes, 15-passenger van.
A 15-passenger van. Now, how many of you were there at this point when you went to Disney the first time?
8 on the first trip. 8 kids.
Okay. 8 kids, 2 parents. Anyone else go with you?
No, not that trip, no.
Okay. Who's driving the van?
My dad part of the way, me part of the way. I had a learner's
You were
permit.
driving the 15-passenger van with 7 younger siblings and your parents, and you were how old when this took place?
15. My mom had just had a baby, so she wasn't taking turns driving. So
because she was in the back seat doing what?
Something illegal. Nursing the baby.
Okay, so we didn't know that car seats were a necessity back then? I mean,
we had car seats, but I don't know. I look back and I'm like, what in the world? But
is this why you're such a car seat fiend? I mean, you were like, no, he's got to be in backwards and he's got to be buckled this way and the straps have to be tight.
Possibly,
is that where you got your affinity for car seat safety? Was watching your mother take these babies out of their seats while on a trip with a 15-year-old driver. And if you're not from Alabama, guess what? You can't get a driver's license at 15 in Alabama. Did you have a permit?
I had a permit, yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right.
You can drive with a permit.
So it was legal.
It was legal. My dad was in the front seat, so that's
okay. Very good.
Cool. So
all right. Now, just, we have 4 kids, you and I. So, which of our kids at 15 would you have had drive a 15-passenger van from Birmingham to Orlando?
None. I didn't even want to get in the car with them when they were 15, just driving me in a regular car.
Okay, so how long of a trip was that for folks who aren't from Birmingham?
I mean, 10, 11 hours. So,
it's a long trip.
Yeah.
And this was before the days of DVD players in the car?
Yes. Definitely before the day of DVD players in the car.
So by the time you guys got there, you're like ready for Disney.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We stopped along the way at the rest areas and, ate from a cooler and such. But yeah, I would guess by the time we got there, I don't remember being like, oh, we have to get to the park right now. I just remember being glad to be there and be on vacation. We didn't take vacations when I was growing up. So not only was this like first trip to Disney, it was kind of like our first family vacation besides like one camping vacation. So it was pretty monumental. So
what did you know about Disney before that first trip?
Well, before we started planning the first trip, not much. Just what you would see on like, Sunday nights when they would do like the little promos of Disney World, Michael Eisner introducing like Wonderful World of Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes they do it from the parks or whatever. So that's all I really knew. But once we started planning the trip, I went to the library. And checked out all the travel
library
guides.
Like the Hermione Granger that you are.
Yes, I went to the library.
What did you learn when you went to the library?
Everything I need to know about going to Disney World. So, yeah.
So this is before the days of Google.
Oh, yes. Before the days of Google.
The internet was not an option. You went to the library and did it the old-fashioned way.
Checked out the books.
Do you remember any of the resources you used?
Oh, absolutely. I checked out Birnbaum's, I checked out Fodor's, and I checked out the unofficial guide to Walt Disney World. Okay, those
two may sound familiar to a lot of our viewers, but a lot of them may not know what those are. Can you describe them for me?
Fodor's does like travel guides for places all over the world, and they had one for Disney World. And then Birnbaum's, I don't remember. I just know they have like a travel guide for Disney World. My favorite was the unofficial guide to Walt Disney World because that's where I learned what a touring plan was and the best way to tackle the park and, minimize your walking and the ways to, please the big kids and the little kids and make sure everybody got to ride everything they wanted to ride. And back then, like the big ticket item with the really long lines was Dumbo, believe it or not.
Oh my goodness.
So
wow.
They had like a Dumbo or Die touring plan where you were going to ride Dumbo. And then they also had one, I think, where you could ride Dumbo twice.
Wow.
But yeah, so they had like all these, they had the touring plans for teenagers and for adults and for if you have old people with you and just all these different things. So it's from that, like my family doesn't do Halloween. So like I read about the Haunted Mansion and was like, Mom will not like this. So we're going to skip this one. So we skipped the Haunted Mansion like on our first trip, but all the things my mom was like, nothing scary. And, we read about who could go on what. So I had all the list. And obviously, as you have pointed out, since we were before the days of the internet, we also had to, I had to just make copies at the library, for 10 cents a piece, copy the pages out of the book and take our touring plans with us. And yeah. So yeah, that's what we did. So yeah, by the time we got there, I was
touring plans before touring plans were really a thing. I mean, they had not caught on. Everybody didn't go to Disney World with a touring plan. Now you can download an app and it'll create a touring plan for you. But yours was probably better. Do you remember? Did you go to Magic Kingdom first? I'm guessing you did.
I think we did. Yeah, I think we did. We did. The first trip we did 3 days at the parks. And so we did Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and MGM. And back then,
now known as Hollywood
Kingdom didn't exist. So, but we did Discovery Island, which was kind of like the Animal Kingdom of its time, I guess. So
right. So do you remember the first time looking down Main Street, seeing Cinderella's castle?
Yeah, I remember really being fascinated by the monorail first. Like that was like a big deal. It was like we had never been on anything like that. So that was really cool. But yeah, I remember walking down, Main Street. And when we went in like November. So it was pretty empty back then. Because back then people didn't pull their kids out of school to go on vacations. But we were homeschooled. So it wasn't, a big deal for us. You were
out of school already.
We were out of school all the time. So, but yeah, I remember it being very empty and just being able to just walk, and it not being like, it just felt like you were the only ones in the park, even though you weren't. But I just remember it felt so big and everything was like, wow. But
Yes,
yeah,
I'm guessing after being in a car in a 15-passenger van with that many other people for 10 hours, yes, Disney World would seem very big.
yeah.
I'm glad. That's good. I'm sure that saved your sanity. Where did you stay on that first trip?
We stayed at the Days Inn, which in suites. It was Days Inn the suite, so I had like a kitchen and stuff. It was on Earl Bronson. I don't think it exists anymore. I think it's called like Celebration Suites or something. The building's there, but the name's changed. But yeah,
you've shown that to me a couple of times. It looks kind of run down. Do you remember when you were there the first time? What did it look like? Did it seem new and exciting to you?
I bet it probably wasn't new because if we could afford it, I'm assuming it was really cheap. But I don't really remember thinking that it was run down or anything. So I don't remember it being dirty or anything like that. I remember we stayed there again later, the next trip. So we must have liked it. It had loads of space and a full kitchen, which was, what we needed because we had most of our meals there in the hotel. So, in the interest of cost savings. So,
do you remember when this took place? When that first trip? You said November. What year?
1992.
November of 1992. And that was your very first Walt Disney World trip. And now next month, you are going to register your how manyth visit to a Disney park?
I think like 100. Yeah.
I think you're going to hit the 100 mark on our next trip.
Exciting. Yeah.
It is. It's pretty cool. That's a big deal.
Yes, it is.
And who would have thought in November of 1992 that you fast forward all these years, 25 years later, you have 2 kids working at Walt Disney World?
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that at all. So yeah, it's pretty amazing because when we went, back then your tickets could be saved. And so we had bought 7-day tickets, which is why we only went 3 days the first time because we saved the other 4 days for the return trips. It was always a plan to go on 2 trips. And so
how far were these 2 trips?
3 years.
Oh, wow.
So we went maybe 4 years actually. Maybe 4 years, like 92 and then again in 96, I think.
So you got 7-day tickets. You used the first 3 and banked the other 4, but they didn't expire in 3 or 4 years?
No, they were like just, I don't know if they had expiration dates or if they just, like if they were never expiring or what, but like some of the kids aged out of the kid tickets and we reassigned them to a different kid. It's a whole different world before, I guess they could track everything with thumbprints and such. So you just, gave the ticket to the younger sibling that had become 3 in that time. So, but yeah, so we always planned to do 2 trips. And so while it wasn't like I knew it was like a once in a lifetime thing because I knew we were coming back at some point, it still felt very once in a lifetime-ish. That was the people I knew that had gone to Disney World had only gone a few times each, if that. And then, of course, the fact that we were a large family and never took vacations anyway, it felt like these were the only times that we were going to get to go. And even when we took our kids for the first time, it kind of felt like this is a trip we'll take when they're little and maybe we'll take it again when they're teenagers. So yeah, it is pretty interesting to be here at 100 trips now. So yeah.
And now here we are 25 years later talking about possibly moving to Walt Disney World here in the next few months.
Which is wild too. So,
which is incredible. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So do you remember what your favorite ride was on the first trip?
Peter Pan's Flight.
Yeah. That's still one of your favorites.
It is still one of my favorites. I remember being like, when you get on, and back then, you couldn't do ride-throughs obviously on the internet, and there wasn't somebody telling you how the whole ride worked. Even the guides that told you this is a dark ride, they basically just told you, like, for Snow White's Scary Adventures, they would say, this is a dark ride, and if you have kids that are scared of the dark, you might not want to take them on it. It jerks you around a little bit, and the witch jumps out at you. So be aware of that in case your kid gets scared. But they didn't tell you how the ride worked. And so when you sit down on Peter Pan and the bar comes down and then you take off like you're flying, I was not prepared for that. And so I was not expecting that at all. And I remember being like, whoa. And I mean, I was like trying to figure out how it worked. I was looking up at the ceiling and trying to figure out how it worked, but you couldn't really see it. I still look at it sometimes when I ride it, like, how is this working? Like, I know how it works, but it still feels like you're flying over London. So yeah, that was my favorite.
What is it about that story besides the flying? I mean, I don't know. You seem like you probably would identify with Wendy in that story because she's taking care of her younger brothers and probably looking for some escape. I know you took a lot of mission trips as a teenager. Do you feel like you have any kind of a connection with that story that would have made that one of your favorite rides?
Yeah, I don't really know because, I mean, I always thought Peter Pan himself was a little silly with the whole never grow up thing. Like, it's not realistic. So, definitely I'm more, what?
And so did Wendy. She thought he was a little ridiculous, too.
Right. I'm definitely more like Wendy, like, oh, boys, no, don't step there. You're going to get dirty. And, and it's time for bed and all that kind of stuff. Definitely more like Wendy. But, yeah, so I don't know. I think that possibly that's why it's one of my favorite rides, is just because the element of surprise and the story roped me in, even though I wasn't really attached to the story before. Obviously, I had seen the movie, but I don't know. I can't really explain it, but yeah, it's still definitely one of my favorite rides. It's very nostalgic for me. So, do
you remember any impressions of MGM?
Yes, I love the backlot tour. That was a lot of fun. I wish they still had it. It's probably what I miss about old MGM, is the backlot tour. And I know it's kind of outdated at this point because everything's digital effects, but it was really cool. Some of the things that they showed you how they do, like when you'd go through Catastrophe Canyon and they would, suddenly there's a flood and then there's an earthquake and it's like, wow. And
everything's on fire.
Really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. So
that was a lot of fun. It kind of felt to me, just because, when I was 18, me and my dad took a trip to Anaheim, and we went to Universal Studios Hollywood, and their backlot tour was where you saw Jaws and some of those, but it had a lot of those same exact effects with the flooding and the fire and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of felt like they were trying to recreate something. I remember, what was the name of the ride where you kind of went through all these different movies? The Great Movie Ride?
The Great Movie Ride, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really liked that. It had the Yellow Brick Road from The Wizard of Oz in there.
Yeah.
That was neat.
That was a cool one. That's definitely one that, a lot of people miss. So,
didn't they move it to another park? Doesn't part of that exist somewhere else now?
I don't know. I don't think so. So,
okay, I'm gonna have to do some research because I've seen something.
Yeah, you're gonna have to check.
Said something about that.
I mean, I'm sure they didn't just throw the stuff away. I'm sure the stuff is somewhere. But yeah, that's the building where Mickey and Minnie's is now. So.
Right, yeah. I just thought they took some of the inside of that and moved it somewhere else, but I could be wrong. I don't know. We'll find out.
We'll have to look and find out.
All right. So you also went to Epcot?
Yes.
And what were your impressions of Epcot?
It was like a giant place for homeschoolers. Everything was like educational, which we like stuff like that. So, I mean, I guess I'm a nerd, but I don't. The old Epcot that a lot of people were like, oh, it's so boring. I thought it was really exciting. And I don't remember really what was going on particularly that day, but we had several younger babies with us and stuff. And so there were several times when the kids would just be napping in a stroller or whatever. And so I guess my parents just sat down with them while they were napping or something, because I remember that the older kids were just kind of allowed to roam the interventions halls. And so we got to go around and do all these things. And I remember it being, we didn't really go off on our own a lot anyway. And so I remember it being really cool, not only to just go off on our own, but to go off and explore all these new cool things and these little, experiments and things you could design. And, I don't remember the specifics of anything we really did, but I remember it being very exciting. And then I remember doing the Universe of Energy because my little brother sang the Universe of Energy theme song for what felt like years afterwards. They really, really loved that song. So,
what was the Universe of Energy like? It doesn't exist anymore. So is that the one with the big dinosaurs?
the giant dinosaurs, like you're in those
that was
big
really cool.
moving theater cars with the dinosaurs. Yeah.
I remember that. That was incredible. Those things were huge.
They're
and
massive.
You couldn't tell they were animatronic. You
really had to kind of do a double take on that.
Raising dinosaurs in there.
Right.
What else do you remember about Epcot in those days?
I remember riding Body Wars, which is no longer exists, but the closest ride to it in movement and stuff is Star Tours now, and it made me very, very, very sick. So,
what was the plot of Body Wars?
The plot of Body Wars was actually really cool, and you were like saving the body from a virus that had infected the body. So you were at war tracking the virus and going after it to like eradicate it. Like the body was, I may have this slightly wrong. Maybe we were the virus. I don't remember, but there's a lot of jerking around as as you're like fighting the virus off and stuff, but you go all through the body and it's obviously educating you on, how your body fights off the virus and which cells, and oh, look, here comes a white cell to the rescue and stuff like that. So
they may have retired that ride a little too early. That could have saved our lives during COVID.
Yeah, maybe so.
If people were raised with that ride, they might have understood the science behind COVID a little better and the vaccinations.
Maybe so, yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, that's cool that you remember that. And I know a lot of people have a real affinity for those days of Disney. And I know for both of us, our parents took us both separately. We didn't know each other then. But our parents were still married to each other then and have since divorced, both sets. It was a much simpler time. Obviously, childhood, we didn't really, you had a lot more responsibility than I did, but we didn't know what the adult world really was going to hold for us at that point. Life seemed a lot simpler then. And I think that nostalgic feeling is what keeps people our age anyway coming back to Disney. But recently, they've poured a ton of money into the parks to really reinvent. I mean, especially Epcot. It's not the giant science experiment that it once was.
No, it's not. So, and there's definitely some things I miss. I miss the Interventions halls. I really think there's I miss those. I think they really embodied what Epcot was all about in terms of exploring new things and ideas and stuff. But while I was sad, and I admit that I was not a big fan of Guardians of the Galaxy coming to Epcot because I could not figure out how they were going to make that work. Could not figure it out. But I love that ride. Love that ride.
So much fun.
So it's won me over. So, and they did a great job with the queue, and they turned it into, yes, we're being educated about a fictitious planet, but they turned it into something educational that does try to fit within Epcot, and the ride's amazing. So it works.
The theming of that queue is incredible. You really do get sucked into a story. It's totally on brand for the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy genre, but it's an incredible ride, and you can get a different experience every time because the music can change. And so we'll be in line. We wrote it that last time we were there with our daughter, and she was like, "Oh, I want this song," and she was like manifesting that song. And then we got on the ride, and it was that song. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was a cool little experience that we got to have. And we'll talk more about specific attractions on future episodes. But I do want to ask you, of the 3 parks, which I know Discovery Island wasn't really a full-blown park back then, but of the 3 areas that you visited on that first trip, what was your favorite?
Ooh, I probably would, that's hard. Because Magic Kingdom has, obviously all the movies that I grew up with. And, but I really, really did like MGM a lot. So yeah, that's hard. I mean, I liked Epcot a lot too, but I remember being really just blown away by MGM and Magic Kingdom more. Yeah, that's hard. I don't know. If you would ask me then, I probably would have said MGM, I feel like, because there was a lot of really cool stuff there. But I don't know. Maybe I would have said Magic. I don't know. I haven't ever really stopped to think about it. So,
Okay,
yeah.
fast forward 25 years. Of all the parks that are there now, your favorite is?
Epcot.
Epcot.
Epcot. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us what it is that you love about Epcot now.
Oh gosh, I just love that every time you go there, it can be like a new experience. So, I love the World Showcase. We did not explore that fully when I was younger. There were not very many rides back there, obviously. Just, I guess Maelstrom was there. I can't remember, honestly, back then. And the Grand Fiesta Tour was probably there. But I don't remember us spending a lot of time just like absorbing the countries, probably because we wouldn't have gone in the shops because we didn't really shop when there was a kid. So it was more just kind of taking in like the architecture, but I have a much greater appreciation for that as an adult. And I really, really love just being in the World Showcase and seeing the different countries and the architecture and just all the different ways that they really put the thought and detail into that. And I love the front part of Epcot more now, I think, than I used to too, because there's so many things. I guess I'm resistant to change in some ways, but I do like some of the changes. I mean, I do love to ride Guardians. I love the lights on Spaceship Earth. I love them. I know a lot of people are like, ooh, they make it look ugly. Oh, I love the light shows. I do. I love to watch the light shows. I think they're just as magical as fireworks. So yeah, Epcot's my favorite. I love the festivals. I love the festivals.
You love food and wine.
I love food and wine. Yeah. Flower and Garden's fun too. Yeah, what?
You love food and wine and the Food and Wine Festival.
Nice. Yes, that is true.
I'm just saying, every time we go to Epcot, when the booths are open, when there's a festival going, it doesn't have to be the Food and Wine Festival. You like the Festival of the Arts, you like the Flower and Garden Festival. You like it all.
I do. I like it all. I love the booths. I love trying new things. I love seeing what new things someone has thought up to serve us or found for us to try to drink or carve the bush in the shape of. I love all the different ways that the cast members and the Imagineers have dreamed up, the new things they've dreamed up to show and share with us. So, yeah.
It's just mind-blowing to me that with Epcot being one of our favorite parks since we've been together the last 15 years, one of the best trips that we ever had, we just walked around the World Showcase and went in the shops and ate at some of the restaurants, and it was just awesome. I don't know that we rode anything that day, but we just had an incredible day. A couple years back, we just drove up and had lunch at Canada for our anniversary.
That was so much fun.
Disney has become a huge part of our life, and here we are now, 25 years after your first visit, and our son works at Epcot.
I know. It's surreal to me. I always am like taking pictures, like, like, oh my God, that's my baby boy taking people's orders. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think I almost cried when I saw him working there because I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like, but weird in a very cool way. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, friends, we have a lot more to come after this premiere episode. We took some video the last time we were there a couple of weeks ago. We were walking around Epcot. We tried lots of the food booths, and Brandi shot some video of some of her favorites that we're going to share on the YouTube channel this week. So please follow Choosing the Magic on YouTube, and you'll be able to see Brandi sampling some of her favorites. And actually, I think there's some like cinnamon roll bites that I really loved on there too. So you're going to get to enjoy watching us eat, which is going to be really fun for you. And also, we got to do a special preview of Tron not too long ago. And not only do we take you through the queue and show you some of footage from the track, but we also are going to be taking on what is the better attraction between Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind and Tron, which Life Cycle Run, which is launching here in just 10 days?
April 4th.
Yeah. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. So follow the YouTube channel, subscribe to the Choosing the Magic podcast. We've got lots and lots of new things for you. Before we go, every episode we want to leave you with one great tip for navigating a park. And so I asked Brandi today to give me her number one tip right out of the gate for a successful Disney World adventure. And that tip is what?
Have a plan.
What does that mean?
Figure out what everybody really wants to ride. You don't have to watch all the ride through videos. In fact, I don't like to watch ride through videos. So you don't have to let some things be surprises. But, sometimes you want to ride Tron or you want to ride Guardians because you're hearing about things in the media or whatever. So figure out what's most important to you and make a plan. And the best way, I think, to make a plan is touringplans.com. And I'm not being paid to say that. So
that's right. This is not a sponsored ad, but if they want to sponsor the podcast, we'd certainly be open to that. But touringplans.com, it was a game changer, right? You didn't have to go to the library. You didn't have to check out all the books and do all the research yourself. What difference does Touring Plans make for you?
They've been paying attention to how lines work for, years, obviously, because they already had research and math, and I'm not a math person, but I trust people who use math. And so they have figured out when the best time of day is to ride certain rides. And they tell you where to go so you can help avoid some of the crowds and minimize your waiting and minimize your walking, which is also important. So, because I know some people use Genie Plus and stuff and they're crisscrossing the park all over the place and they may be saving time in line, but they're clocking, 30,000 steps a day and that's crazy. So
right.
there's
and so guys like me, we just can't keep up that pace anymore.
No.
And there's no plan that minimizes walking is much more valuable to me at my age than a plan that minimizes waiting.
Yeah, and with touring plans, you can do both. Mm-hmm. So you can cut some of your weight down and cut some of your walking down and make sure you get to ride the things that you really want to ride. So, you don't have to overthink it. They'll do it for you. Just tell them what you want to do and they plug it in. But at a minimum, I think that you should always know what your kids really want to ride. If you have a kid who's really into Frozen, then you need to get on the Frozen ride. So make sure they meet their favorite princess. Because it may not always be a ride. Maybe it's a show. So just know what your family wants to do and what's important to you and figure out, when those show times are and, what time you need to be in line to make sure you don't have to wait 3.5 hours to ride Flight of Passage. Do that little bit of research on the front end is just going to make your life better. I've seen people in the parks walk in the morning and they pull out a map that they picked up at the gate and they go, okay, so what's at this park? And I'm just like, oh goodness. And I feel so bad for them. I just want to go help them. I do. I just want to go help them because I feel so bad for them because I feel like they're not going to get to do all the things that they probably thought they were going to get to do because they don't know where anything is. And they didn't even know what was at that park till they got there that morning. So yeah, just, spend a little bit of time planning on the front end. You don't have to spend hours and hours like I do, but a little bit of time will help you when you get there. So
absolutely. And there are travel professionals that do this for a living that can put together a plan for you. So
touring plans will do that too.
Yeah. Touringplans.com. Check it out. Again, that's not a sponsored ad. That's just real life advice. All right. One last thing before we go, baby. I asked you about your favorite park. What's your favorite attraction at Disney right now?
Flight of Passage.
It's been Flight of Passage ever since it opened, right?
It has been, yeah. As soon as we rode it, I was like, this is my new favorite ride. Sorry, Tower of Terror.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Tower of Terror was dethroned. All right. So, friends, on the next episode, we are going to take you through our adventure on our preview ride of Tron. It's going to be a lot of fun. Don't miss it. Babe, this was a lot of fun. See, you're a podcaster now. Woohoo! We'll see you next time, folks.